Наразі попереду ще одна остання на сьогодні платформа. Шановні гості, просимо зайняти свої місця. Ми вже розпочинаємо засідання останньої на сьогодні дискусійної платформи.
We're coming to the closure to the discussion platform 5, and this is gender mainstreaming in local governance. And we're going to discuss the ways, success, experience, and challenges of gender mainstreaming in the process of planning, implementation, and reporting on budget programs. So we're going to talk about the local levels and how to deal with the budget programs. And the moderator would be Mr. Dmytro Mikisha, member of the Parliament of Ukraine, servant of the People faction, member of the Equal Opportunities Caucus. And we would like to invite Mrs. Alina Babak, Minister of Development of Communities and Territories of Ukraine, Irina Kuprichuk, acting head of the State Administration City of Sumy, Mrs. Wojciechowska, the People's Deputies and initiator of the Ukrainian Women's Congress initiator, Mr. Hugh Montgomery, the Hugh Montgomery from Canada, mayor of the city, Montreal Borough, Côte de Médé, Notre Dame de Grâce, Canada, Marina Honda, deputy head of the Kiev state administration, Gudrun Moisler Turnstrom, member of the Congress of Local and Regional Authorities of the Council of Europe, Austria. And Oksana Pitsik, the head of Smidinska community, Volyn region. Elizabeth Glatzer, international gender and public expert. So we're going to give a word to Dmytro, so thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Voice. So I am very glad to greet you. 1 year ago, I also participated in this Congress, but I was one of the speakers. And today I'm a moderator already of this panel. A little bit nervous, and I tell you honestly. And before I become the members of parliament, I was the deputy head of the city and I passed through all the process of decentralizations for establishing of the amalgamated community. So then I was in charge of the specific strategic activities and the investments and also the public society institutions activity also. And I wanted to raise this question to talk about this, and I'm very glad to see this respectful speakers among us, and I mean, she speakers, experienced women speakers, and the first word I would like to say that decentralization process is not the delegation of your responsibilities. It's not the funds to provide, but it's a kind of a tool to provide the tools and to show that the people are the important people on the land. They are in charge of the decision-making process. They need to satisfy all the needs they have, and this tool like decentralization is focused on these changes. What does it mean, decentralization, and how it goes? What is the stages? What's going on now? What is in priority? And what to expect in the coming months, a few months, days at least, in the coming year? Then I would like to give a word to our first speaker, to Mrs. Aliona Babak, Minister of the Development of Communities and Territories of Ukraine. So good afternoon to everybody. So, and it's extremely glad to be here to participate on this Congress, and I'm glad that my colleagues in Parliament continue to implement these initiatives, and this is our third Congress, and I'm very thankful, dear colleagues, and I want to greet all Interfaction Union, and I'm very glad that this is our third Congress, and it works and it's great. And so as for the gender aspects regarding the decentralization, I would like to say the following thing. First of all, what do we mean the reform of self-governance? We say a lot of things. For me, this self-governance means that you have being inside of your amalgamated communities. That means you have to have the good quality life, very secure and protected surroundings, and then you have to have the equal possibilities. Demographic groups should have the same accesses and possibilities, and this is what we're talking about, the accessibility, the access for every person, and the access to the people, the members of the amalgamated communities. So we approved the strategy of the gender equality for the year 2019-2021. And this strategy is approved. And with this strategy, we can observe the institutional abilities aspects to be implemented in our life, and the aspects of the gender equality is the very important things in the reform of the decentralization process. Through this gender-oriented budgeting is very important thing also. It's a gender profile of the communities, which is also very important to understand demographic, let's say, the demographic portrait of the communities. We have to determine what is the community. Is it mainly women or men, maybe more older people, or consist of more older people in this amalgamated communities, what they need, etc. So we understand that every community must have the so-called gender evaluation of the gender accessibility to the different services. And gender audit, I want to say that through this audit, we got the typical profiles of the amalgamated communities, and we started to study, and we're dealing with the Sumska, Kherson, and Chernivetska. So, well, in fact, we understand just to gather all the statistics documents, we at least need to have 1 year to work with these profiles. And well, we have partners, and we're working this project together with our partners until the next project. So we'll get all that profiles of our 12 amalgamated communities, and then we can share with all the experiences and results, and we will share about our decisions we made based on that profile we gathered. So well, as for the accessibility, so we'll let me say that gender audit of accessibility was done in Kramatorsk. It was done from the support and with the support of the UN Women Organization. So we do not have yet the public presentation on the gender accessibility in Severodonetsk, but we're expecting to have it. And based on the results of these presentations of this research, we could make the very serious decision to be expanded for other communities. But what about the results of Kramatorsk? You can see we have some recommendations on gender audit of accessibility, and we can transform it into the special recommendations to be applied, to be implemented. They have to understand the specific surrounding and the availability of the surrounding for different types of groups. From all that audit results, I would like to say that we do have the very special things, like, for example, the numbers of the gynecological observation equipment for those women with the disabilities, for example. So the profile gynecologist should have this specific equipment for supporting the needs of the women which has disabilities. Well, so that women should be equal, should feel equal among the members of the community. So there are another things we can realize through the audit of accessibility. And so we had the different meetings in Kramatorsk, and we analyzed what things and what activity we've done there, and we expected and still waiting for the results. And we have to understand that this experience could be shared with other amalgamated communities. So we have the inclusive DBN plan. Also, we're approving the order of the Ministry of Regional Development on the approved monitoring process regarding the accessibility of the disabled group to the status of national. So we send the draft project on the order and on methods of monitoring, and also we monitored the special ability to the disabled people, monitoring for the accessibility for them to have the access to the specific services. Also, we had the council's meetings of donors organizations, so we were talking about their abilities in case of the decentralization reform. So and all the experiences should be transformed into the practical manuals and recommendations for our communities to implement the strategy and the further on ideas. And it should be the action plan for us for the coming few days. And I also would like to say a few words about the examples as a result of our gender-oriented budgeting, which become quite a positive practice in Ukraine, and we will promote these ideas further on. Because of it, we got the very serious examples of the positive methodological gender-oriented budgeting samples. And so because of it, we got the very gender-responsive actions really improved the situation. So in Ivano-Frankivsk Oblast, we made the audit, and then we came to understand that the sports activity should be the more acceptable. We filled this with the specific video programs, training courses. We made other specific improvements for the ladies, for the women, and the Merikhnyanska Hromada in Kharkiv Oblast. So we had analyzed all that activities in this Hromada in the amalgamated community, but we were talking about the so-called profile approach, and because of this profile approach, they got the program of Biblionanary. The Biblionanary, the new program, that's the about the library workers, and they got the specific services for the women to provide the services. Ternopilska Oblast, we had the gender passport investigations, and after that they created the program Social Taxi. That's especially the program for the disabled people. Vasilkiivska Hromada, they created, based on the audit and gender budgeting, they established this target-oriented social program to give a lift to the kids to the educational institutions, because for them it was the problem because of the lack of the transportation. So when they organize these transportation services. Dnipropetrovsk, they made the audit of the sports playgrounds for the kids, and they came to the conclusion that all the playgrounds only for the youngest kids. And then because of this, they started the new program on improvement of this playground and to make this playground to be acceptable to the kids of the older age, for example. And in Kramatorsk, in this city council, they are implementing this accessibility program, and we have lots of examples of these positive changes, and unfortunately I don't have enough time for verbalizing all the results, but our work of our ministry is based on our strategic document and action plan. We're going to get for the next year how to promote these instruments, those which are successfully in implementation, and we hope to generalize it, and then we continue our reform of decentralization just to get the better life and safer life.
Thank you, Ms. Babiak. And you are making the examples of how effectively used such tools as gender-responsive budgeting. I have a very short question to you, whether you are planning to use the same tool at your ministry. Are you going to implement this in terms of your Ministry of Development of Community and Territories of Ukraine, or even in the whole government? For sure, according to the strategy, we're going to implement these gender equality principles and including gender responsive budgeting, but just because we just started, we just are new members to the government, we didn't have enough time to include those principles in this year's budget. But I think the next year we are going to be ready in advance. We have worked the methodology for the separate directorates of our ministry, and for example, such program as Drinking Water for Ukraine, which is supposed to contain gender aspect, and we are going to promote the same principles for our work, for regional development programs and other programs for state budgeting, but I think for the next year. I should speak sincerely about this, that we already have the experience, we already have the practice, but we just lack time, and we should get ready for the next year. Very interesting how the same programs of gender equality and basically gender-responsive budgeting is implemented at the regional level. And I would like to give the floor to Ms. Irina Kupraychik, acting head of the state administration of the city of Sumy, and to hear about your experience. And sorry, I will keep the time limit because we won't meet the framework. I will be very concise and only comment upon the most important. First of all, my gratitude that I have a chance today to participate in this Congress. And I would like to say that among 25 regions of Ukraine, I am the only acting head of the regional administration. And today we've spoken mostly about equal rights and equal opportunities. And I will start with healthcare. In our region, we actually have the extraction of 40% of oil of all the territory of Ukraine. And unfortunately, that is why we have one of the highest cancer disease or oncological diseases rate in region. But I can say that currently, decentralization since the 1st of April, all of our healthcare communities and facilities, they should sign the agreements with the National Health Service. So our region, we have a lot of our hospitals that are not ready for this. They don't have the necessary equipment, and this is a real huge problem for us. Now, at this point, I'm here to discuss this topic and to appeal to women who are the heads or the members of parliament, the women with particular authorities, that we have these issues. The second one, education. We speak about equality in education, but I can say that we don't have it now for children who are getting education in town and rural area, because they enter the same higher education establishment at the same conditions, but they don't have the same learning environments. I'm not going to comment any further upon this, but you are aware of this problem. Thirdly, very briefly, I participate in many events, and when we go, for example, and commemorate the flowers, and I cannot watch those faces who are standing as monuments next to the monuments, children standing next to the monuments during those ceremonies. And today, the president that I am actually supporting, and I think all intelligent people support this, he does everything to keep the peace, and I call everybody. I think that none of the intelligent men or women want their children to die and to get killed, and I think we together should try and support and unite that in our country we should have peaceful situation, and our country should be free, peaceful, and economically rich. So we should have, all of us should have equal opportunities and live happily as happy individuals. Thank you very much. I'm just worried a little bit. Yeah, I'm just excited. Ms. Irina, I've listened to your speech very attentively, and thank you that you are being concerned by the problems that you've spoken about as for healthcare, education. And I have a question. What's at the regional level, at the state regional administration level? Do we have any programs in terms of gender equality? Probably there are some support programs or for women entrepreneurship activities at the regional level. How are you solving the problem of involvement of women to decision making in the region? In this room, I've seen women from our region. This is the head of the first community, which is headed by the woman, and she is present here today, and nobody asks us whether you are a man or a woman, because in the village, I can say you will be, I think, surprised, but like 80% of everything is done by women. They work, they bring up children, they go to work on daily basis, they are participating in authorities. So they are not asking anyone, they are just going and doing. So how to involve men to this process if we have 80% of women ruling in the village? I say in the village, not in town. But you see, all of the men, they like to go to big cities, and because it's much more comfortable here, it's better, obviously. And they leave women in the village. Yeah, I think so. I know, what the point I'm trying to make. Our women, they are strong, they are extremely intelligent and very kind. They have big and open hearts. When I go to Kiev, I know a lot of women who are here, who are in leading positions, and I tell them about the problems, about the help that we need. I don't go to men, I do go to those women. And they hear me and they help me, and I have a real big hope that in our region we will find the solution to these problems, and I'm sure about that. And such platform as Ukrainian Women's Congress is created for this, so we can communicate, we can hear to each other words. And I would like to give the floor to one of the co-founders of this platform, of the co-founder of Caucus Equal Opportunity in Верховна Рада of the AIDS calling, пані Світлана Войцехівська.
Thank you. So, well, I'm going to cry, Ivan. Thank you, dear colleagues. Thank you for your applause, but let us speak seriously. We're going to speak about the decentralization, which is one of the opportunities, but it's a kind of extremely great challenge for our society. So, well, and today we've been talking about the different opportunities, the political involvement, educational involvement. We've been talking about our beauty of our spirits, hardworking abilities, but we do have figures, and the figures tells us about the equal opportunities of the women and in the so-called decentralized amalgamated communities. That's what does it mean? General communities. That's the rural area. That's 8 million women as of today in Ukraine. And let's analyze the equal opportunities for this rural areas citizens, for this rural areas women. In the central part of Europe, in the civilized country, we have 52% of the women in the rural areas. They don't have access to the good quality medicine. So, well, about 70, they don't have access to the internet. 32%, they don't have the access to the good quality water. Neither to water, neither no to the acceptable good medical services. But financial literacy is also the problem. 67% they have the lack of financial literacy, and the 52% of women, they cannot save a little bit savings. They cannot save money for the future. So every third woman in the rural areas is the woman who suffered from domestic violence. This is very bad figures, scary figures. And my colleague and my friend Alyona Babak would develop this strategy actively from the bottom of her heart. But every one of us, those who are working in the amalgamated communities, they need to understand that the figures are different, and the figures depends on the number of women in the city councils, from 8 to 20%. If the amalgamated community is already established, it doesn't mean that they are gender equal or gender sensitive things. Let me speak briefly. This is first. And the second thing is why the situation we have as of today, the specific lack of desire for the women to go to be elected for these, local city councils, etc. So to participate actively in the life of the communities. So the women, they understood that it should be resource, land plots or whatever. So on the local level, a woman suffered from the lack of opportunities. She has a lot of responsibilities. She cannot become a leader because she limited with the specific responsibilities for families. She has the lack of the accesses to the specific services, and she doesn't understand how to do it, how to deal with this. And also, she suffered from this gender roles or gender specific stigmatization. Let's say if you are at home, then you are dependent. You depend on your husband, and you are following the so-called your husband's desire. So, in the leadership, let's say the sisters movement, women's leadership is important. We have to support each other, to hold the hand of each other, and to provide the equality. And to provide equality is also the very important process of decentralization. Unfortunately, we have not harmonized regional policy. They are not imbalanced. The local authority accepted hard, but when we're just talking about the budget, they are forgetting to think about the equality principles. They are not thinking about the services. What about the gender expertise issue? It is very important not only the legislation level. The Ministry of Justice is involved with this gender expertise activity for a long period of time. Gender expertise should be active in every authority of the local level authorities. All the normative acts should be based on the gender balanced principles, just to provide the equal opportunities. Gender budgeting. Well, it's good instrument, it's good tool, but this tool is helpless without any gender indexes and statistics. As of today, that situation of women in the rural areas are out of the survey or etc. So all the information we got from our partners, so they made the research, and if there is a lack of statistics, we have the lack of so-called managed budgeting approaches. So and all the local authority should take into consideration all these cases. Well, the beauty saves the world, that's true, but the leadership of women really will help us. So, and let us be active, and let's participate in the election process on a local level. I mean, dear women, let's do it. So, I think this is such a positive sentences, and then but we will continue to discuss it. Svetlana, you rose a lot of issues, and you told us about the index statistics and gender budgeting, but well, the question about the leadership, what do you think the state should do just to raise the leadership of women on the topest level, especially to motivate them to be very influential in the decision-making process? What do you think? Well, it takes 5 hours to talk about this, but I have a very small proposal. We can discuss this. Listen, why women I have no idea how to say the correct word. Why women are
Actually, why women don't always want to run for voluntary amalgamated communities leaders? Because To be a woman means not to be paid for the time you spend with family, and you dedicate your time you should spend from the family. So there is a budget from the community. So why shouldn't we, I don't know, start the discussion and not to try and consider in our parliament, according to the law on local budgeting, that the community can actually decide for partial reimbursement for those people who work at the local authorities, isn't it? Of course, there should be accountability, a great deal of accountability and reporting in terms of their results of their performance, but still bad budgets exists. So we can just allocate a small portion of funds for the kind of stimulating the women, and so they can run for local authorities elections. And I would like to switch to the biggest local budget of Ukraine. Ms. Marina Honda, deputy head of the Kiev state administration. And Kiev is considered to be the leader for whole Ukraine, our business card city, and the city example for everybody. And I will start with the question, if you allow me, whether the city of Kiev, the leader of gender equality process and women involvement into the decision making. Yeah, I know that you are the only one deputy head. Yeah, so you are quite right. Yeah, because really the Kiev as a European capital should meet those basic standards which are determined by the state. What my point? My point is I am thankful to those people who for 3 years they organized this forum, because these events, because now we have a lot of events in Verkhovna Rada, in the Cabinet of Ministers, but the question is that these are step-by-step procedure. At the national level, there are some changes, so then in the local level, even if it is capital, the city of Kiev, the village, the township, we don't observe those changes, unfortunately. I know that we have many women from other regions, and at local, I think, territories, we are trying to implement the strategies taken by the state, but it's very hard when the leading specialist doesn't have this understanding what are we talking about, when the reform is implemented, when there is no 100 understanding what is budget responsive, gender responsive budgeting. And I am responsible for the social policy, for the accessibility, for people with different challenges. And when the professional only deals with the question of getting subsidy, he doesn't have time to work with gender responsive questions. Sooner or later, of course, we are going to this. It's not the question of male rights or female rights. It's given as the provision of some targeted civil service. But for the city of Kiev, what we've started to do recently, our members of parliament, they joined the European Charter of Men and Women Equality, and the mayor signed this decision. And we also had a great meeting with UN Women Initiative, how to implement this charter, because Kiev, this is 3 million of people, and out of them we have like 500,000 children who receive different reimbursements from the state, people with limited abilities, a lot of internally displaced people who has, as a rule, 2 children who are also internally displaced. Having the biggest budget, yeah, I know what you mean, but we still have to provide the real allocation of the budget for the targeted service. We started to implement the gender equality into our strategy. It was a particular requirement from our mayor, and we starting to develop, taking into account all of those documents, we started the development of gender passport, and we not only see the gaps, we see even observe that the statistics is taken not in a very nice, correct way, and we have different national universities which are not accountable to Kiev. They don't even have this dimension, this gender dimension, in terms of their students and their staff, teaching staff to understand what we are talking about, actually, and what are those needs. For 11,000 of children with special needs, we cannot find this dimension in the statistics. We've started this process recently, like a week ago. For example, they established the hot telephone line for the combating the violence, because we have a lot of fixed, like 10%, just 10% of the domestic violence cases. And during 1 week, taking into account that we haven't advertised it, because in a testing mode together with police, 141 call on domestic violence. There were 2 from men with the suicidal inclinations. So the question is that gender equality, it's not only about women and their implementation, yeah, and equal opportunities and everything. So when talking about Kiev, I would like to say that the ministries that are at the, I don't know, they being in the city of Kiev, of course, it's much easier to find out this information, to make a phone call. But for the central authorities, it looks like that Kiev is near, and you can do it on your own. Of course, in community, in smaller community where everybody knows everyone. In Kiev, we even don't know who lives in this next apartment, so it's much more complicated. We have 10 regional administrations, and one region is like the whole region of Ukraine. Troyeshchina, for example, 300,000 people, and I always make this statement to international organizations: don't be afraid of us, and we should apply the same approaches as European capital cities do. So when talking about the implementation of the strategy, on behalf of the city of Kiev, we are trying to do this, but we lack the legislation and of the national level. We lack that from the 1st of January there will be new law on civil services, and some of the regulations are not adopted yet, and I don't know how we're going to provide those social services, taking into account that the part of the legislation is missing. My colleague was talking about the hospitals, and we basically have the same problem that we do. And without the national standard, without the national regulations, we will not be able to do this. If we did this, lack of obstacles, the ban. Okay, who is going to control at the project for removing the obstacles for wheelchaired people? So, what deals with the strategy implementations? It actually hasn't stopped. This is the continuation. This is something which is going to be. But for 120 deputies, we have 22 women, and their voices are not heard quite loudly. But for the woman, it's easier to approach the question of children with special needs. It's more understandable for her for these gender-oriented violence, because men sometimes doesn't even know how to approach this issue. So the more women are elected for the city council, the more women will be represented at regional administration. It's better. I cannot say that it's bad for me. I don't even say for whom it's worse, for me or for my colleagues. But if I also had another woman colleague, it would have been very, very pleasing and much easier. So I think that everybody is tired today. So thank you for the question. Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you. I would like to welcome Oksana Pitsik. Oksana Pitsik, the head of Smedinska community, Volyn region. Thank you so much. I've heard a lot from my colleagues. I have the small amalgamated community, the village type, and what Minister of Development, Mrs. Aliona, already told that this is great that we take into consideration the needs of the different representatives of the different societies. But really, we face a lot of problems during this. For example, we face a lot of obstacles. For example, for implementation of the project, we have to create the specific documents. We have to pay for all the specific possibilities to do it, etc. So, well, in the rural areas, we have to have the educational. We have to pay for the permits. Over there, it seems to be a kind of advantage over women from the side of men there. So, well, when we are establishing this specific ramp, we have to understand that we have to break the stereotypes. The stereotypes should be really destroyed. That's why we have to have this activity. So we have 50 to 50 men to women there, so the majority of women, and by meetings with the colleagues showed me about the different results. So, well, I'm very thankful with you, lead, because we can share with our problems and the understanding that you are not alone, and you are not alone in this fighting way. You're not alone, as my colleague from Petrikivka shared. You're like a revolutionary. It's very important to show to the rest of the women that it's possible to be the head of this amalgamated community. It's very important to be a leader, to lead. I was the head of the non-government organization, and then I joined the self-governance, and the self-governance for me, it's a new sphere of my activity now. And what I want to say was lucky, because we're actively participating in the different initiatives, and mainly women are involved. Men, they do not want to work for the society for free of charge. So, well, they want money for this, and it's obvious. And for me, it's very important to implement a comfortable way of life. We have to think. We have to think how to provide this comfortable way of life. We have to have the access to the inclusive type of education. By my education, I am a teacher, but the main mission, what I can see, the main mission is to show to the women, those who are living in the rural areas, that you can reach a lot of things. Even it's the goal. It's even better. It's not just only to cook or to clean, and you have to be a good example. This is what I'm doing. Thank you. So I have a short question. What about gender-oriented budgeting? Do you have this gender-oriented budgeting? Have you ever heard about this? Yes, I've heard 3 years ago. And firstly, I've heard about this from non-government organization. I was with the NGO for that moment. So, well, but in reality, we've had a lot of other budgeting implementations, but the next year would be gender-oriented for us. And we will realize everything according with the rules, according with the recommendations. Well, we have to create the specific preconditions for further implementations. And and we implemented the transparent budgeting principle. So next year we will be more analyzing, and all these training congresses, conferences, for us it's important because it's provide us the more wide range approach. And so from one amalgamated communities, we're coming to another amalgamated communities to the before to provide this way to tell us about your experience. So, well, you've heard about our gender equality and regarding the participating of women in the decision-making process, regarding the women's leadership, etc. So, well, and decision-making as for the gender-oriented budgeting. And I would like to give a word to Mrs. Sue Montgomery, the member of the Congress of Local and Regional Authority of the Council, Sue Montgomery, sorry, mayor of the city of Mount Rosborough.
Добрий день. It's an inspiration and a real privilege, and I'm thrilled to be in Ukraine. It's my first time, and it's just wonderful. So thank you to the organizers for inviting me. And I'd just like to point out our moderator matched his socks to the chair, and I think that's pretty awesome. So well done. We have to give credit when the credit is due. So, yeah, I guess there's a bit of a delay in the jokes. Okay. I'd also like to thank women in history who fought so hard for the rights that we have now, the right to vote and other rights that we've been given or they fought for. And I'd like us to take a moment to think about women in the future and how we would like them to remember us. And that perhaps these conferences will be a page in the history of Ukraine where your kids will look back, your daughters, and say, these women fought for us. So we have to keep up the fight. We cannot give up. I was elected in 2017, and it was an amazing election in Montreal. It was municipal. It was the first time a woman mayor was elected in my borough of 170,000 people. It was the first time we got a woman mayor in Montreal, and it was the first time we got parity in city council. 51.4% women were elected. I don't know who the 0.4% was, but anyway. But I don't come from a political background. In fact, if you had told me 3 years ago that I would be a politician, I'd say you're crazy. But life has a funny way of taking us down different paths. And I was a journalist for 30 years, and I covered a lot of social justice issues and legal issues, legal affairs. I covered the Velvet Revolution in the former Czechoslovakia. I covered the end of apartheid. I covered the release of Nelson Mandela, earthquake in Haiti, and the coup d'etat in Haiti. So your revolution, the revolution of dignity, really resonates with me. Because I think, at heart, I'm really a revolutionary. I'm not really a politician. So one of the things that I did, we've been talking about sexual violence. And in 2014, there was a radio personality in Canada who was accused by a lot of women of sexually assaulting them. There were women that he had dated, women he had worked with. And the public reaction was they sided with the accused and said, there's no way he could have done that. Why don't these women give their names? Why don't they go to the police? And I was so angry because I knew why these women weren't going to the police, why they weren't going public with their own names, is because none of us do. Because we won't be believed. We will have to, if we are believed, we'll have to go through a horrible trial. Our whole life will be, personal life will be made public. So we keep quiet. So I created the hashtag in anger, being raped, never reported. And in the first 48 hours, it was used 10 million times around the world. So there's a lot of women out there that needed to talk about sexual violence. So we broke the silence, and we have to continue to speak out about sexual violence. So I come from a country that is known for democracy and, equality on paper. And so when I was elected, I was, I was pretty excited. We got parity. And then they gave out the manual to the newly elected officials. And this is what the manual looks like. So, I don't know. There we go. So you see it's got a man suit on it, right? There's no woman there. It's just a man. So I was like, okay, where's the manual for the women? So I've said in the next election, 2021, we're going to have a new manual. So then, as we sat in city council, I noticed that the women were very efficient when they spoke. They would stand up, they would say their piece, they would sit down. But the men, they seemed to talk a lot and to use up all their time and to put on theater and to repeat things and to blah, blah, blah. So I thought, I'm going to test this theory. And I knit in city council because French is not my mother tongue, and in Montreal, everything's in French. And so it helps me focus when I knit, so I can really pay attention to what these men talking. So I thought, I'm going to knit in red when men talk, and when women talk, I'm going to knit in green. So this is what happened. So the wool doesn't lie. This is my first ball of green wool. And this is what's left of the second ball of red. So, here we go. So we have a long way to go. Even though we have parity, the men take up more time. So I also have to chair my own borough council. So we have 19 boroughs in Montreal. It's extremely complicated, ridiculously complicated. But we have 19 boroughs, and my borough is the biggest, with 170,000 people, and about 40% of the population, they weren't born in Canada. So immigrants, when they come to Canada, they tend to come to my borough, because they've heard it's got the best mayor. No, that's not right. So I decided I noticed during these council meetings that I had to chair, and I'd never chaired meetings before, the audience would come in, they'd be so mad, and we're gonna, and so I thought, this is very combative, it's not very productive, so I started a little thing at the beginning where we all have to meditate, take a deep breath, think about how lucky we are to live in a democracy, that we can gather and talk and get along and find solutions. And then I decided to alternate questions between men and women. And that really brought down the combative thing, because there's a certain demographic of man that gets up there and just beats his chest and screams at me. I've had to throw 3 men out of my meetings for being disrespectful. So I think word has got around. They're starting to behave. They're being calm. And so that's what I do in my meetings. And I also want to encourage more women to ask questions and to come to the meetings. And I don't think women want to come to a meeting if it's just, people yelling. So I found that's helped a lot. And in terms of my borough, we are doing things like when we redo a street, and we redo them a lot because we have we're well known for our potholes. I find your roads here very nice, so compared to Montreal. So we redesign the street, and we do things like make the sidewalk wider. So it's better for pedestrians, it's better for people with their strollers, their children. We make what's called curb extensions at the intersections, so you can cross the street faster. It's a shorter distance to go, so you're not going to get killed by a Montreal driver. If you've ever been to Montreal, they're bad drivers. So basically, we're trying to design the city for people and not cars. I also have a coffee with the mayor every month where I invite residents to come and have a coffee or a beer with me or whatever, and just chat in a more informal manner, because some people are really intimidated by the idea of a council meeting. And we also have a Council of Montreal Women. And this is a council that's made up of 15 women that reflects the city, the diversity. And they advise the council on putting that gender lens on everything we do, everything. So for example, Montreal is a huge concert and festival city, but a lot of women were being sexually harassed and sexually assaulted at these festivals. So these women said, what we need more security at these events, and we need like a specific designated area where women can hang out and feel safe. So that's just sort of some concrete ideas. So what I just wanted to end though we also, a couple other things we do is we allow women to breastfeed in the council chambers, which ironically some older women found kind of weird. And we also give paternity leave or maternity leave to counselors. You can only take 3 months. Usually in Canada it's a year, but because you're only elected for 4 years, you can only take 3 months, but you can share it with your partner. So anyway, I'm just going to wrap up by saying that, I think we get the idea that politics is really hard. I think guys want us to believe that, it's really hard, you don't want to do it. Only the men can do it, it's very hard. It's not actually that hard. And I think actually women are very good at it. And yeah, you have to have a tough skin, but when there's a lot of women, you support each other. There's solidarity, you have each other's back, and it changes the atmosphere. And the thing is that, but it's not enough just to be elected. Like, you can be invited to the party, but you kind of have to be asked to dance as well. So we have to keep pushing once you get elected. So my advice to all of you is if someone approaches you and asks you to run, which is what happened to me, just say yes. Just go for it. I mean, what is the worst that could happen? So you lose. You lose. So what? It's a great experience. You meet a lot of people. So just go for it.
Чи правильно я зрозумів?
Correct me if I'm wrong. 51% of women in your council. It means it doesn't mean that your green, piece of wool will be finished very fast. Ну, в цьому є
Parity, the men talk, they repeat themselves, they like to hear the sound of their voice. I don't know why they do it. So I've spoken to some of these men. I said, this was you. I say, this is you at the meeting today. They said, no, what I said was very important. And it's like, no, it's not important. No one is listening to you. No one. You are boring. But they don't want to believe it. But other men, they pay attention. They're like, they come to me after the meeting. Each meeting is divided by the white. So I did like, I don't know, 5 meetings. So they come up after the meeting, they say, how did we do today? Were we better? Did we behave? So, you know, so there is an awareness, but there's one counselor who's been in office for 37 years, dinosaur, he refuses to believe that he's boring the rest of us to death. So.
Дякую. Я не знаю.
So I don't know, probably we should talk a little bit more about this. Thank you very much, Ms. Montgomery. And then I would like to give the floor to the international expert on gender and public, Ms. Elizabeth Klotzer. So you have the floor now, and we are waiting for your speech.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I feel privileged to be part of this great Congress, and it's amazing to see the endurance and the lively discussions going on through the whole day. So I'm very positive about the changes, because that's what the feminist movement needed for centuries, to have the endurance, perseverance, and keep going, patience, and I see that being here, so very happy to be part of these discussions. The next point where I'm very pleased is that we here finally have the panel in which we talk about the one thing of key importance to all the issues covered over the whole day. And you keep on pushing on the budget question, Dmitro, which is very, very important, because as an economist, but not only as that, also as being involved in fighting towards gender equality for decades now, I just see it comes down to have adequate resources for anything, for any problem. You, of course, need to do a lot of things. There was a lot of talk about fighting stereotypes, whatever. But in any area, the key matter is there the resources available, and are the resources, even if they are tiny and small and too little, are they distributed in a way that they contribute to equality of all, to gender equality, to a better society, to social justice, etc. And I really consider this, the involvement of advocates for gender equality on economic issues and on budgetary issues as one of the key to really make changes. And you, Sue, you mentioned that men tend to make us believe that politics is very tough and hard. And even more so, the system, or maybe also some men, make us believe that economics and budgetary issues and public finance is a hard and complicated issue. So only something for the experts who are trained, etc. And I say no, I can say so as an economist, I say no, finance issues are not complicated, but they mean it's entering the powerhouse. Because the question of distribution of resources is always a question struggling who has a say, who has how much say, whose interests get financed, and whose don't get enough money. And all the issues that were raised today, be it gender equality in education, be it violence against women, health issues. You mentioned it all, and we heard many examples. One of the issues there is not really a good financing, and especially in this area, there is not enough equality in terms of using the resources, and even if it's short resources, as I said. Second point, it's really great to be part of this now rather long project, already 6 years ongoing, gender-responsive budgeting in Ukraine. I'm an external one, but I see this project working with public officials, both at the state level, but especially at local levels, oblast levels, in doing really great work, and I think many experts are here in the room who work hard to really show that in any area of public activities and any budget program, it matters to really put on spectacles of gender equality and look, how are the resources used? Is it increasing equality, or is it possibly leaving things which are unequal the way it is, or are they possibly also increasing inequalities? So there is great evidence here in the country, and super experts, and also many public officials. I guess it's by now it's thousands at different levels, Kiev, you name it, wherever, who have done great work. So, and other projects, Mr. Woodward mentioned that also you are involved in, like at the local level, decentralization and gender budgeting. So there is really a lot to build on. So why can't we just lean back and say, super, done, it's great? Well, the issue is one of, let me say it in technical terms, institutionalization, or let me say it just simply, make it a regular part of any public financing. Make it mandatory to do a good analysis, to know what the budget program is doing, how much it's increasing inequalities, how much is there need to improve. So that should be self-evident for any activity. So the point is to reach for institutionalization in terms of saying, we have a good system, so we change the law, or you change the law here, the budget code, to really say it's simply regular practice, mandatory for any level, states, local level, amalgamated communities, to do this gender analysis of the budget program and then to make the relevant changes. And that's not much, and that's the call, I guess, where I would call all on you in the room who have a lot of contacts and are influential at different levels, to really make the Verkhovna Rada to pass this change in the budget code, which makes it just a simple, self-evident and regular practice to do gender budgeting, because I see the country really is ripe for it. And it's not only for the sake of gender equality. As we know from a lot of research, the European Institute for Gender Equality has done some research for EU countries which show that economic growth is quite is a legal requirement, but it also means that there is resources and staff available. That we are talking about gender machinery or gender equality people working together with finance people as a standard to really make it work. And again, I just want to, and that was basically your question to the minister before, how are you going to do it? And I guess it's also at the state level that there is a lot of readiness. That's what I heard from you, Madam Minister, to go about it. And so we hope to come here. And why am I saying it? Last point. It's really a lot of self-interest, because I am internationally very much involved in different gender budgeting projects and different work across the different countries. So I always bring this great example of this continuous work in Ukraine, and I tell about all the positive gender budget analysis done. So I can do so for so long. After a couple years, they would ask me, so is the pilot phase is finished? Is there something coming out of it? So in 1 year or two, I would want to go back to all these international fora and say, yes, Ukraine did this step and has institutionalized it and is using it to its full benefits. So thanks for the opportunity to being here, and good luck.
Thank you. Особисто в мене дуже
So, well, I have a lot of questions about gender budgeting, but unfortunately, the time is almost over, and I would like to give a word to Mrs. Gudrun Moisles-Sturstrom, member of the Congress of Local and Regional Authorities of the Council of Europe.
Glad to be here today. Ukraine, I have a special relation to Ukraine. Since 2014, I'm regularly here as an election observer on high-level missions, coming with the Congress of the Council of Europe. So this country, let me tell you, is in my heart. I just want to make it more precise, because you hear all the time the Council of Europe and the Congress. What are we? You have to think of that the Council of Europe is the roof of a house with different pillars. Those pillars are the Human Rights Court, the Committee of the Ministers, the Parliamentary Assembly, and the Congress. The Congress is dealing with the core issues of the Council of Europe, as you heard today: democracy, rule of rights, and wait a minute, democracy, rule of human rights. I'm sorry, because we focus on the local and regional level. So this is the Congress, I would like to, I'm very glad to let you look more into the work of the Congress and the Council of Europe increasing gender equality. And we have done a lot. And you said now, if you are a financial expert or you have knowledge of the financial world, it's the entrance in the powerhouse. Yes, it is. But if you have legal knowledge, if you have a know-how about the instruments available beside the financial instruments, then you are really in the house. And those instruments we are giving you. And I want to share some experience with you. I have been in politics in 20 years on different levels, on local, regional, and European level. And what have I experienced in a matter of gender equality and gender mainstreaming? Well, I was not a politician either, so it was a coincidence that I finally was in the regional parliament in Austria. Before, I have been living for 12 years in Sweden, and gender equality was for me self-evident. I mean, that was just had to be. Then I came back to Austria in '88, and I came into politics, and finally I realized it is not self-evident at all. Because when I came into parliament, I said, I do not want to be a speaker for health, for social issues, child care. I was working in, I'm a system analyzer, and I was working with computers and economics. I would like to be economic speaker. I would like to be the speaker for research and development, and I would like to be the speaker for energy. People were looking at me, wow, do you think you can do that? It was 20 years ago. And I said, yes, I can. I can remember my first speech in the regional parliament. I still think today it was a good speech. But the men were sitting there, doing like this. I mean, I was not knitting, otherwise it's a good idea. And afterwards, a colleague went up. And you know what he said? This was the Red Riding Hood's dreams. And I thought, this can't be true, I'll show you. And a few years later, I was the first woman elected president of the regional parliament. And nobody said this to me any longer. So it really, it's just one thing, it's just one formative occurrence. As you had it, I had this. And at that moment, I thought, I really have to fight for gender equality. And I did it all the years until today, and it's really worth to do it, I can tell you. So I came in 2009 into the Congress as a member of the Congress in the Council of Europe, and this was wonderful because gender equality is at the very heart of the Council of Europe and of the Congress, and we are dealing a lot with it since the 1980s. And since then onwards, we have done a lot of work in this Council of Europe and in the Congress concerning gender equality, reports, recommendations, and those I will talk about a little for you, because those are the additional instruments you need to your financial knowledge that you really are in this powerhouse. So but what does it mean in practice that the Council of Europe and the Congress has been working since the 1980s on this subject? It's still a long way to go, a very long way to go. We see it in many member states. We have 47 member states that even on the local, regional, and national level, this is not really an issue. And we have to improve this work on gender equality. And therefore, a conference like this is so valuable. It's a treasure, and as you said, I see the picture in front of me. Once you will be in the books of history, because you have taken a step important for the future of other politicians, women as men. And why is it that way? I was asking myself very often, why is it so hard to go forward? And this is because role models and role images are slowly changing. Politics was for centuries man's business. The meeting times, everything is fitting to the man's world. I mean, only if you see an example, the session times are often an obstacle for women, and which make it difficult to reconcile politics and family life. So other reasons include, as you mentioned it, the structures in politics. Administration and associations are very often male-dominated. So I think what you said today, don't wait until it is served to you, the equal possibility. Take it, just take it. The men will not change it by themselves. We women have to do it, and we can. So what can we do? This is also an experience, no matter if you're on local, regional, European level, national level. What can we do? I always say everything starts at grassroots level. And I give you two indications. The first is is in a way the easiest one. For some, it's not so easy, but you can decide by yourself. Take the floor. Be visible. So don't wait until every man has spoken and perhaps you raise your hand and say something with a nice voice. No, go out, be the first, speak. I always have done this, and it helps to challenge societal perceptions on or misconceptions on gender equality. And the second one is, and we have seen it now, the local and regional politics. It's a very good starting pool for women, you can learn a lot and then you can go on upwards. And we have one example, I think, today, Sanna Marin, a 34-year-old woman, has become and has been sworn in as the Finnish Prime Minister, and she started at local and regional level. So why don't we do it? So we will. Another thing is, the second is a little harder, but it's to do. It's also depending on you. Forge female alliances. Form those alliances, because together we are stronger. It has been said already. The third one, inform yourself. Look into
Panie
recommendations.
And finally.
Yeah, finally. Look, but those are the most important ones, because this is the one I add to the financial knowledge now, the legal instruments. Look into the recommendations and reports done by the Congress. Go in our homepage. I give you some example, and you will see Ukraine has done a lot. First of all, we have the Council of Europe Transversal Program on Gender Equality, launched in 2012. Look into it. Then the Congress and the Council of Europe recommendation on preventing and combating sexism, an upcoming Congress report, now soon upcoming, fighting sexism against women in politics on local and regional level. And do you all, or some of you, for instance, know that more than 60 Ukrainian municipalities have adopted the European Charter for Women and Men on Local Life within the last year? Do you know that? But those who do not know, look into it. It will help you. So, or the implementation of the law on domestic violence adopted by the Ukrainian parliament in December 2018. So
Пані, у нас не залишиться часу на
Well, we would kindly ask you to close.
I don't understand you, so I can't continue. I have no, I don't understand. Yeah, but still.
You have
I
to
will.
stop.
I know, I understood you. Even if I did not understand, I understood your body language. Ladies and gentlemen, there has been a lot of work done. There is a lot of knowledge. Look into it. Look on the Congress website. It would help you. And thank you for this invitation. And I wish you all the best for the future. You will do it.
Дякую.
Отже, we don't have much time for questions, and before passing to the questions, I would kindly ask you to give a round of applause to our speakers for such an incredible experience they shared with us. So we have like 6 minutes, probably less, yeah, for the questions. The first question from the man, very briefly to Ms. Alona Babiak, because we spoke a lot about gender analysis, and we cannot speak about gender analysis without gender-oriented data, and we do not collect such kind of data in Ukrainian statistics. And for 10 years, all of the experts, they were waiting for changing of the standards, which is supposed to be in 2020. And as we know, the Cabinet of Ministers actually announced the reconciliation of this population exit poll for the next year, and we will be just using the information from the SIM cards or something like this. So should we wait for this population study, or it should be transferred up to the next election, or your commentary upon this? So the decision on the population poll, we still are talking about this. Probably we can find some cheaper ways for implementing this task, which was put for us, which is usually used via this poll. But still there is a discussion with the Institute of Demography and Social Studies whether we can substitute it with some other way, this standardized statistical process, which is the population poll. So we haven't made the final decision based on this. Actually, the data is not quite gender-oriented, and it's not enough for gender analysis, and we need, as I've said, we need just a year to form the gender profile for communities, just because we lack data and we're going to collect it via different programs, via different tools. And as a result of this, I think we will witness what we are missing at the level of community, which data we are missing, and probably then it will be the basis for collection of the data via standard statistical tools. Thank you. Another question here. Kirovograd region, Kovpanivska territorial community, Ms. Alona. The question is to Svetlana Wojciechowska. You've highlighted in your speech that in rural areas women do not have equal opportunities, but at this point we also feel that even a kind of syndrome of losing, because in hospitals, in some regional hospitals are at the level of extinction, and I as a doctor feel a lot of pain in this, because it looks like I burst into tears, because for combating this we need some, for example, blood donations, and I would like to call the authorities to find the resources to give the necessary quality blood donation to regional hospitals, because we have a lot of very nice doctors who would like to work within the state healthcare system. Thank you. So the question is not a question, I think the remark, but I totally share your concerns and I do understand what you're talking about. But I would like to say one thing. When we mothers, now the mother founders, as we've been called today, when we spoke about this Ukrainian Women's Congress, one of the basic motivation and primarily tasks is not only to say loudly, to speak up about women's problems and equal opportunities at the national level, but also extremely important task was, it's a kind of mentorship mission. We would like to show and to tell and to help you and motivate you that you should enter political activities, new politics activities. Nobody is going to solve these questions instead of us, as you are actually belong to the community and to the local authorities bodies. Before 2015, there wasn't such opportunity, and thanks to this interfractional group, equal opportunity within the history of Ukraine, now we have quotas for local elections, and a lot of women, they actually entered their political careers. So you have these opportunities. You've heard from the ruling political party that they're going to support this, so let's all together use this opportunity. And as for, I would like to Mr. Moderator didn't respond to what Verkhovna Rada should do. The previous calling of Verkhovna Rada, we have developed, together with international organizations, the draft law on statistics in Ukraine, because this law which exists, it's like outdated and it doesn't meet the requirements of the modern society. And I think we should go back to this draft law, and in times of Yanukovych, gender indicators, they were removed from the statistical science, and now you have all of the opportunity to bring it back and to actually take this draft law. Okay, I will pay my attention, and I think the final question for today, because we have zeros on our timer. Okay. Okay, let me bring you the microphone. Thank you. My name is Marina Bublik. I represent here the Association of Rome from Dora, and I am also the mediator of a fund of International Fund Charity. I have one remark to new Ukrainian school, Very often, children from Roman community are discriminated in schools, and unfortunately, they don't have the tolerance lessons in new Ukrainian schools, which could help children since the beginning to try and for children to respect each other. Probably we should have some introductions, amendments, and I would very glad to cooperate with you in this. Okay, let me respond to this. You see, I went to school and I lived in the community, and in my grades there were children who belong to Roma groups, and I know what it means. And I would like to say that every grade had only boys. So this is the two-way road. Yeah, the state should bring up the tolerant attitude and not discriminating according to ethical minorities, but the community itself should also move toward the state and work with the members of these communities. So girls should go to school and not get married at 12 years of age. I think that there are problems that exist, not like one-day solution, but here our movement should be like two-way roads. As for New Ukrainian School, I'm not ready to comment about this project, but if we try to communicate a little bit more, I would like to help you.
Thank you so much. Thank you to all participants. Thank you for being with us. Sorry to being late, so thank you for our speakers. Thank you and welcome back again. Thank you to all participants for this discussion, and we kindly ask the speakers to stay at the platform. And the guests, the first day is complete. Thank you for your participation. I would like to remind that tomorrow the first discussion panel would start 9:30 sharp, so well. Thank you so much.
Лишите на кріслах. Будь ласка, не забирайте їх з собою. Пристрої для синхронного перекладу залиште, будь ласка, на місцях. Запрошуємо вас продовжити спілкування у неформальній атмосфері. І ми щиро дякуємо нашим партнерам, за підтримку яких третій Український жіночий конгрес відбувається. Український жіночий конгрес проводиться у партнерстві з Національним демократичним інститутом, Агентством США з міжнародного розвитку, Міжнародною організацією Global Communities, Швецією, Посольством Канади в Україні та Фондом розвитку ефективного врядування Великої Британії. Ми вдячні програмі для України з розширення прав і можливостей на місцевому рівні, підзвітності та розвитку U-Lead з Європою, яка спільно фінансується Європейським Союзом та його країнами-членами Данією, Естонією, Німеччиною, Польщею та Швецією. Ми також вдячні структурі ООН «Жінки в Україні», програмі розвитку ООН в Україні, ЮНІСЕФ в Україні, Бюро з демократичних інститутів і прав людини ОБСЄ, проекту «Проміс», Федерації канадських муніципалітетів та проекту «Гендерне бюджетування в Україні», представництву Європейського Союзу в Україні, представництву НАТО в Україні, Офісу Ради Європи в Україні, консультативній місії ЄС в Україні, посольствам Норвегії, Данії та Швеції в Україні, а також Сітібанк в Україні, фонду Олени Пінчук та компаніям Coca-Cola та Horizon Capital. Дякуємо вам за сьогодні. На все добре. До зустрічі завтра.